there was something, we had that one time where it's not like
is it green on the feed? Yeah.
But that looks for VGA. This is all or nothing. This is HDMI.
Oh.
All right, let's go and get the thing started.
VGA, that's normal-ish. HDMI, that's
right.
Really weird. Maybe the gun on the projector is a little wonky.
Maybe, but we're going.
Okay.
Sorry.
Welcome, everybody.
Woo! Yes!
Thank you. I'm going to give a speed version of this talk because I didn't plan on going till 6 o'clock anyways. So I came up with the idea of this talk and consequently the book that I'm writing when I went through an entire overhaul of a hospital network and then went on to my next job at a school system and had to start the whole thing over again and was hearing horror stories from everybody walking into companies and none of the basics are covered. Dave talked about it earlier. You don't need to craft any super fancy exploits because everybody doesn't do firewall, basic firewall rules. So this is me. You all know me anyways. I'm going to pass this one. That's the book. You all know about that anyways. Thank God I only have like 42 more days to write and then I'm done. You can get it online now as the chapters come out. I think it's up to 6 or 8 or something like that. So the whole point is low-hanging fruit's going to be hacked. You need to be more secure than the next guy for the most part. And the first thing you need to do is work with stakeholders. Presenting your research, explaining and creating plans, milestones, repeatable milestones, tabletop drills, exercises, working with the entire company. It's not just the security team doing security. You kind of have to explain it to everybody else that it kind of crosses the entire department or organization. So this one has been nobody does asset management right. If you find somebody that does asset management right and is like super control and they know exactly what is on their network 100%, let me talk to them because I'm having a really hard time writing about this to do it correctly also because it varies so much from environment to environment. But the thing is you can't protect on your network what you don't know you have. It took us like an entire year before we found out we had a Windows 2000 box that wasn't on the domain, but it was sitting off in a corner, would only be turned on like 5 hours of the day and then be shut off again. But you have no idea that's there unless you have really in-depth asset management. So a lot of places that new devices can come into the network from third-party vendors to the normal channels like when you work with purchasing to buy new servers or new equipment. Bring your own device is a whole other can of worms. Creating one source of truth for all of your documentation. So I work a lot onboarding customers when they're deploying Splunk. And one of the questions I ask them is, all right, do you know what all of your domain controllers are, where all your DHCP lies, where all your, PII servers are, because we create custom alerts based on whatever you have, right? I'd say 90% of them have no idea. I had the best Monday this week because I was working with a brand new customer and a very large customer, and they usually don't have as much of a grasp on things. And sent them this big, large email that I always send out with all these questions about the assets that they have. And within 2 hours, they had me answers on everything. They knew what was on what network, what could talk to what, where their PII data was. It was absolutely wonderful. I'll probably talk to them how they do, how they're able to do that too. But and then visibility into your network. Sometimes you have subdomains and sister organizations and stuff like that you might not have visibility into, or you're not supposed to have visibility into, and you do anyways. Automating. So when we did asset management, it was all by hand, and I hate working in spreadsheets. Absolutely hate working in spreadsheets. So there's some really good asset management tools out there. I think I have one on the bottom of this. Snipeitapp.com. So my co-author's name is Lee Brotherston. This is a friend of his, so I told him that I'd plug this app. It looks pretty cool. I don't have to do any asset management myself anymore, but if you do, this might be pretty cool. It's a free tool that's out there to do it. And then the entire circle, because asset management isn't a project. It's not a one-time thing. It's a process. You have to do it consistently throughout the life cycle of the company. So on top of asset management, there is information gathering. So it's great that you might now know exactly what devices are on your network, but you don't know what's on those devices. You don't know what services they run. You don't know what data is on them. And a lot of this data information gathering will help kind of fill in the gaps where needed. This is a pretty cool little website. It tells you all the different OSINT things that you can do. Before I worked for that school district, I should have done my homework on them beforehand. I showed up, and of course they had zero security, but they also had, it was 4 or 5 /16, 17s, all publicly accessible to the internet. And they wouldn't let me touch anything. So knowing you can do a lot of OSINT if you're looking to go into a company to find out if you actually want to make that jump, and kind of know what you're getting yourself into beforehand. So more OSINT that you can do. Build With will tell you what certain application servers are built out of, what version of Apache, IIS, that kind of stuff. Recon NG. It's a tool written by Tim Tomes. It's like MultiGo. It'll do a bunch of OSINT gathering. It's just command line and written kind of like Metasploit is. There's a Harvester Python script that used to be in Kali, but I'm not sure if it is anymore. When I used to do internal phishing education awareness programs, this was the first set of email addresses I gathered, because this is what the attacker can get super easy. It crawls Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, a whole bunch of different platforms online, and gives you a nice list of email addresses that you can then send phishes to. A really, one of the alerts that we like to set up is kind of like a honeypot email address. Set it up as white text on white background on your public-facing internet, web server, and nothing should ever go to that unless somebody's scraping your site for email addresses. There's Shodan. It was created by John Matherly. There's a really good book on how to use it, a bunch of different searches and how to create reports and work with the API that will tell you what all of your company's IP addresses are that are out on the internet. So those are going to be the bigger targets. And again, like that place that I worked for had tens of thousands of IP addresses listed. And all the ports. So my idea was, there's a lot of people push back because they can't get any money from their C-level execs because they don't understand that it takes money a lot of times to do this kind of stuff, but a lot of people aren't doing their due diligence on the free stuff that you could possibly do too. Small companies, medium-sized companies don't have $3 million IT budget to go out and buy, all the fancy stuff or services with people to have them come and do it for them. They have 1 or 2 people that are working on a super limited budget, and there's so many free tools out there that you can use to secure your network down as much as possible and then go back to the executives and say, look, this is what I've done so far. Now, we've filled this entire gap. I've done everything I can do. It's for free. Could we get like a vulnerability scanner now? But you can get a trial vulnerability scanner. They usually give you a subset of IP addresses that you can scan, and it'll kind of give you at least an idea. Scan your server subnet first and all of your important assets and see, what you're dealing with. Then, that's your starting point. You can go back, a year or two later and see what the differences are and how far you've gotten. There are best practice group policy objects out there. NIST has a whole bunch of templates that you can download, also for free, that pretty much locks down all of the Active Directory attributes for you, so you don't have to go through all 5 million GPO settings and do it yourself. It's dangerous to put that on an Active Directory domain that's up and running and hasn't had any GPOs applied, because that could lock down a whole bunch of stuff that's in your production environment. But you could use it for images. You can put those GPOs on like a Windows 7, Windows 10 box. You can install those GPOs locally, so if they have any problems connecting to the domain, they still have somewhat of a security posture there. How many places does everybody know that walk in and they have the entire IT department in domain admins, right? Because it's easier that way. All the software works when you install it. They don't ever have to worry about their software not working or their services stopping, because domain admin works across the board. It's great. Taking that away can be really difficult, like backpedaling off of it. You have to figure out, what the applications are doing, what the services are doing, what permissions they need delegated, that kind of stuff. But nobody should have domain admin privileges unless they have, Microsoft level certification and know what a domain controller is and what power that those credentials hold. Getting rid of open shares. This is an Nmap script that you can run. I'd like everybody to write this down. No? All right. There's also one in PowerShell that you can run that's less lines. But it will scan your network and show you all the open shares that are out there, which open shares are bad. We'll keep going. So other things you can do that are free and easy. Disabling Telnet and other insecure ports like ILO. So integrated lights out cards are inherently unsecure, have default passwords, and a really insecure protocol that it uses. Upgrading that protocol, getting rid of Telnet. A lot of places, will have old Cisco switches or, mainframes that don't support anything but Telnet and FTP. But you can still alert on its use, and audit that kind of stuff. Ensure web logins use HTTPS. I did not this year DEF CON, but the year before that, I did the SECTF, which was the most embarrassing experience of my life. But I really enjoyed the OSINT portion of it. You go out and they give you a target, and you go out and find a bunch of open source intelligence on it, and you give them a report before you actually go to DEF CON and do the whole call thing. My target was Frontier. All of their F5 load balancers or whatever they were using from F5, you could log in over HTTP. Yes. Right, it's a feature, not a bug. Locate and destroy plain text passwords. The first pen test I was ever involved in, I wasn't doing the pen test. I was actually still in a help desk, and I was like babysitting the pen tester that was there. And they had domain admin in less than 10 minutes. One of our network security, we didn't have a security department. one of our network admins had all passwords that he had to all switches and servers and appliances and everything in a password protected Excel file. That's a no-no. No open Wi-Fi. Also, when I was in the help desk, it was right around that time, I had I don't like beer.
Not supposed to like it. Use
I'm going to keep going with my story. We had open Wi-Fi. That open Wi-Fi was available for all of the patients at the hospital. As a help desk analyst or whatever we were called, it was our job to go and help the people that were in the rooms connect to the Wi-Fi if they needed help. So we got a call from this lady, and she was letting us know that our Wi-Fi was down. She couldn't connect it. Just to call and let us know. I'm like, all right, well, what room are you in? We'll come up and help you connect. She's like, oh, I'm on so-and-so street, like like a block down. This old lady was using our open Wi-Fi for her internet access. Disable ports that are unused and set up port security. So that way I can't walk over to a plug that's in here and plug in and get a DHCP address and be on your server VLAN. There are relatively easy ways to go through and disable all unused ports, and also set up port security, so that way I can't unplug somebody else that has been plugged in there and is actually, a working member of this company, and plug my own laptop in, because it's going to notice the new MAC address and it's going to automatically shut it off. Some other free stuff, disabling SSL. So 33% of servers are vulnerable to Heartbleed, Poodle, all that kind of stuff, Drown. There is a website that you can go to test your web servers to see if they're vulnerable. And OWASP and SANS has some really good information on how you go about fixing them. Setting up centralized logins. That way when, your net admin freaks out and flips the table and leaves, you don't have to log into 500 individual, Cisco switches and delete their account. You can do it in one place. BitLocker and encryption on endpoints, especially if you're in healthcare or somewhere else that has like PCI or PII data. It's very important, especially in a media perspective. You don't want to be the next place to say, oh, so-and-so nurse got her laptop stolen out of the back of her car, and now you have to have a big press release. Backup device, network device configurations, and also limit who has access to them. They shouldn't be going to an open share. That kind of stuff. And patching your Linux boxes, because a lot of people will put the Linux box in the corner, especially if they don't have a Linux admin, and forget about it, because it always works and it's always on and they don't ever have to worry about it. It just kind of sits there and doesn't have any backups. So 3 billion devices run Java. Most of them wish they hadn't. Removing unneeded software. There are some third-party applications that will let you do that will do that for you, or you can script it or blacklist it or whatever. Block browsing from servers, because I've seen porn pop-ups on domain controllers before. Log successful logins. It's just the best practice for like brute force attacks, that kind of stuff. You can't really correlate that kind of data unless you log both unsuccessful and successful. I already went over that, changing the ILO settings, and single roles on servers. All right, so this kind of ties in to the lady that was hopping on our Wi-Fi. One of the greatest things we got to fix while there was, we had our public-facing web server was dual-homed, so it was connected to both the internet, and had 2 NICs in it. It was connected to the internet and our internal network. Its database, its Microsoft SQL database backend was on our domain controller, And that domain controller also handed out DHCP to that open wireless. So you could go full circle out, in the wireless, back out to the internet, and just. Disabling DNS zone transfers. People can find out a lot about your internal systems with what's in your DNS zone. I already covered that one. Closing open mail relays. You don't want, your mail server to end up on one of those multiple lists that are out on the internet that you can just send mail to anybody as anybody. More than likely you'll know because you get blacklisted fairly quick. And force advanced auditing. So where do you think the ransomware started encrypting files? This one's a difficult one just because advanced auditing takes up a lot of resources on devices. So I'm not really sure if you don't have those resources, what exactly you could do about it. There's a lot of, I don't know a whole lot about ransomware, but this is one of the things, if you have the resources, that you can do. This is one of my favorite tools. I did admin stuff for the longest time, and it will basically do an SNMP walk of your entire network and tell you what is on what ports are open and closed, the port history of the MAC addresses that have been on there, all in a GUI interface. It will allow you to enable and disable ports from this if you want to set that up. The VLANs, the port descriptions, it will tell you all the iOS versions that are on your network. Great tool. For free, a little bit of a pain in the ass to set up, but overall, huge amount of gain for no money.
You have to have access to the switch?
Yes. Yep. And don't forget your printers, because you don't want Nazi stuff printing out to them from Youve, Bill's favorite person. That wasn't me, right? Next one. So software that you can install. URL scan. Screens incoming requests to your servers. It's a Windows thing. So if you have IIS, that's something that you can install, and it will block certain things that it seems it's malicious. Fail to ban will automatically set up firewall rules to ban certain things. I've installed it just by default, but I know there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you can do to configure it. Web application firewalls, Microsoft Baseline Security Analyzer, and Emmet are all free. I just found out that Emmet's being end of life in 2019 or something.
I read they just extended it for one more year.
Yeah, I'm just going to ignore that because I just wrote a bunch of stuff about it. So, it's still a good tool. It will still, block a lot of, depth mitigations and ASLR mitigations, stuff like that. All right, on we go. IRA bug out bag. So not everybody can afford to just call me Indian and say you need to come and help us figure out what the hell went wrong and who got what. If your data center gets hit by a meteor, you have to do something, right? You have to have, this is the IT prepper kit that you should have for those kind of situations. The most important is the caffeine and snacks. You can have those even if you're not going through an IR emergency, though. So then we go on to the free and not completely easy. Some of the stuff that I covered, depending on skill set, isn't completely easy, but this stuff is definitely harder. Different local admin passwords, and I always forget the LAPS. I actually remembered it this time because Dave just mentioned it. LAPS will let you automate the different local admin passwords, so they can't hop from one box to the next. Least privileges is a pain in the ass. Any type of software analysts or devs or someone that is used to having either full local admin access or domain admin access, or any they can connect to anything they want. It's a learned behavior. You have to work not only with the learned behavior, but you also have to work with the technical aspect of it and figuring out what they need to do their job, because you don't want to be the bad guy that's taking away all their access to everything that they actually legitimately need. App whitelisting. This is my favorite one, just because the last time I talked about it, I had a really bad hangover/migraine, and I froze up on stage. Now I'm making up for it because I've talked nonstop for the last 42 minutes. App whitelisting, definitely better than blacklisting, because blacklisting is like playing whack-a-mole. Setting up canary in the coal mines. So, fake LinkedIn accounts. Using those to look at pretexts for phishing, or set up a full-blown MySQL server that has some fairly easy vulnerabilities on it, and monitor those and alert on those, because nobody should be connecting to those. There's some for ransomware. There's you set a different ransomware works different ways, but some of them go from an alphabetical order through to the directories, and you can have a top directory that is open that nobody's supposed to access, and if you see those files being edited and touched, you can alert on that as well. And egress filtering. Holy crap. There's so many people that don't do egress filtering. Because they think all the threats come from the outside, right? But now everybody has 5 devices with them at any point in time. You can walk in, have it connected at home, they do traveling, they plug in the USB drive they found, they get stuff from vendors. You greatly reduce your scope by specifying, this IP address can only access this IP address over this port. Do ranges, whatever, but it should be as specific as humanly possible both ways. Purple teaming. So I did some purple teaming when in my last job. I don't get to do it so much anymore, and I kind of miss it. But you don't have to be super elite. I'm a self-professed really, really shitty pen tester. Like I've never actually done it, but I look at my my scores in CTFs, and I just know that I'm not the best at it right now. It's something that I'm working on. But there's some really easy things that you can do to kind of at least, work on your network in between professional pen tests, right? So what the hell just happened? Okay, my screen just flashed. Dave also covered this. There's NetBIOS and LMNR poisoning with Responder. I'm not going to go into that too much. You can do Nmap and mass scan. Will also help you with that asset management discovery process. Some great assets on beginner Metasploit stuff. You can scan for those ILO cards. You can do different auxiliary scanners across your network, even if you don't necessarily know how to pop a box or do anything else. You're learning how to use the tool, and you're finding out more about your network in the process. There's Rawr, which is really cool. My friend Larry showed it to me, and it will scan your whole network and give you a nice report at the end with a screenshot of all the websites it's found. So, oh, did he? Okay, you have to introduce me to him, because he knows that I put it. All right. And it gives you a nice little report of all of the websites that are on your We have to clap for him too. Yes. Good job, man. I love this tool. And SET is social engineering toolkit. It's what I use to do my phishing exercises. And some more crap that you can look at. The top one is Top 5 Ways Spider Labs Got Domain Admin. It includes a lot of the stuff I already mentioned, but goes way more in detail. And then there's another one that's like Top 5 Pen Test Things they found. When I brought this slide up at DerbyCon, like half the audience left. Because nobody likes to go to a compliance talk, but come on, it's one slide. All right, so I'm a very firm believer that compliance is great, it's needed, and is definitely somewhat of a minimum. But once you go through and you secure your network, compliance pretty much just ends up happening. Don't do compliance first, do security first. Simple as that. Segmentation, DMZ behind a firewall. Obviously that web server that I talked about wasn't in a DMZ because it was the firewall, I guess. Lots of VLANs. It's great for segmenting, critical assets and, the HR PCs and the, engineering PCs and all that kind of stuff. You can put different access control lists in between the VLANs. That makes it so you don't have to buy a firewall to go in between everything. There's still VLAN hopping and stuff that you can do, but that's more advanced and still it's good security in layers. Active Directory delegation of rights. Goes along with the least privilege. You can, give the help desk abilities to do certain things that make it so your job's way easier. And I mean, really, how much work do you want to do at the end of the day? And now it's the expensive part. After you've done all of the free stuff, so that's a shit ton of stuff that you can do in your network that is completely free, and it really just takes your time. Then you can go to the executive staff. You have the trial vulnerability report that you had performed. You have all of these steps that you've gone through to secure your network that were completely free. If you do not have a budget after you've put in your due diligence and gone through the pain that all of that is, just leave. They're never going to give you a budget after that point. If you cannot make them see how important it is and how much work that you've already provided them, they're not going to see the value in security. So getting a real vulnerability scanner, SIM, IDS, IPS, and a professional pen test. I'm being recorded, so I'm going to limit my rant about this. There's a lot of places that say that there's a pen test, but they're really just vulnerability assessments. They may massage the report, or they may just print out the Nessus scan and hand that to you. So that didn't even show up. Yes, real pen tests, definitely important. Two-factor auth, and not just two-factor auth implemented correctly. You can have two-factor auth that is compliant and still doesn't work. There is a certain two-factor auth provider, and I know this one for sure, but there might be other ones that do it, that you don't have an auth code on your phone, or you don't have a token, or a prox card or whatever. You would type in your username and password, and they would call you, the number you have registered with your two-factor auth software or whatever, and all you'd have to do is hit pound. 4 or 5 users in a row, the pen tester put in the captured username and password, it did the two-factor auth, and they hit pound anyways. It's compliant. You technically have two-factor auth, but it's definitely not secure. And then you can get all the blinky boxes that are out there. Get organized, so IP address management. If you can put this in the same software that you have your assets in, that's great. Just, to kind of put all that information together. Just, again, another thing that we had to do in a spreadsheet, which was not fun, because nobody wants to use DNS either, heaven forbid. Password safes, tabletops, drills, and a run book. Those are really fun to do. The drills and the tabletops. It's just like, it's great practice. I was at a client's and working with this global company. They have probably 20, 25 people in the room. Several of us are vendors. And working through, they went through the entire thing from, what they did with the media, what they did, communicating to internal employees, what they talking to their shareholders, to when they would bring in the pen testers or the IR team. We did, I kid you not, we did a tabletop on this, and 2 weeks later they had almost the exact same attack happen on their network, and they still messed it up. But way less than they would have if they wouldn't have just gone over it and updated their run book and gone through all of these exercises. And that's it. Whew. Blaze through it. Any questions? Yes?
You go do your women in InfoSec talk.
When is your talk tomorrow?
Yeah.
We're giving a panel tomorrow on whatever Adrian wants to give a panel on.
What's your panel, Adrian?
We're going to do women in InfoSec. You want to do women in InfoSec panel? All right. Nick, you want to be on it?
Sure. Not qualified.
Neither's Adrian.
You can have that fixed. You're going to be a little sore by tomorrow.
I think my wife would be a little more sad.
I don't know how to turn this off.
Don't ever turn it off.